breaking down on a camel's back. They just have to go cause they don't know whack. So all your favorite streets is appealing to see. You won't get undercounted cause you're damn free.
There's something that Eddie Kingston in his interview with Wrestling with the Narrative said about me and, more importantly, the video essay community that I'm in that I've never stopped thinking about.
I just want to tell, the community, the video essay community, I think I said it before you started recording, please keep going. Please. Meltzer is the historian that did it in, writing and in print and everything like that. You guys, the video essay guys that go on YouTube, their Patreon, all that. I can name a couple of you, but not all of you, but like yourself, Joseph, I'm going to forget names. I shouldn't have started. Four Pillars of Hell, Wrestling Bios, who's covering the Monday Night War. All you guys, and I know there's more. Andos is another one. There's a bunch of you.
When I made this channel, I never had any intention of doing anything profound. I just wanted to be able to share my thoughts and feelings on why I thought a wrestling match was cool, and if someone out there watched the same match I discussed and thought the same, that made me happy. And given the fact that I've been welcomed into this niche video essay community by individuals who feel the same and share my same passion, means I think I did a pretty good job so far. But whether I realized it or not, I was contributing to something that was much bigger and more important than even I realized: history. See, whether I realized it or not, I and many others became responsible for helping continue the discussion of pro wrestling's past and even present to ensure that it exists for the next generation. When I discuss and analyze these matches, I do so from the standpoint that these matches are important, not just because the wrestling was good or that the wrestlers themselves were good, but because the story being told in the ring, the situations, and time and place they exist are significant in terms of pushing the art form forward and inspiring countless matches and wrestlers in their wake. That's the double-edged sword of time. While we as fans can go into a match cold and still appreciate the in-ring work, I think there's something that's equally as special and exciting about understanding the story of where the competitors came from and what led them here. In my Ishikawa Ikeda video, I went into detail about how in awe I was of the sheer aggression and emotion both men put into their holds, strikes, and selling, but understanding the relationship and passion both men shared for wrestling and the philosophy both men held, while different, came together to make magic in the ring, which in turn made those matches and the story told within resonate with me much deeper. Same with my video on Don't Matsumoto vs Chigusa Nagayo. The match itself was an uncomfortable spectacle of chaos and carnage, but knowing the landscape of Joshi in the 80s, the popularity of the Crush Gals, and the sheer hatred for the atrocious alliance makes the emotions in reaction to that match far more engaging. And the same can be said about today's subject. Yes, if you're in this space, you don't need me telling you how much of a classic Samoa Joe vs Kenta Kobashi is. Chances are, if you're watching this, you can recite this match move for move. But if it was just a great match, we wouldn't still be mythicizing it 20 years later. And I feel that that is significant. Because what about the next 20 years, and the 20 years after that? When the men who are involved in the ring and those around it are no longer with us, their deafening roars are hushed to mere whispers, who will tell their story? Who will tell that what they did with their bodies to give to the art they loved mattered? Who will tell that they were contributing to something that was much bigger and more important than they even realized? History. Samoa Joe. Kenta Kobashi. This is the story of how both men came together, the relations between Japanese and American promotions, and the story they told in the ring. This is their reverence for history. Now, I want to make one thing clear. Kenta Kobashi was not the first Japanese talent to come to Ring of Honor. Ring of Honor had always been trying to court pro-res companies to bring talent over to America, as Ring of Honor wanted to establish itself as the work rate promotion, putting on the best in-ring matches as its very own talent on top of its fan base worshipped and idolized Puro's history through tape trading. Hell, Samoa Joe vs. Loki is a giant swing in a pair of baby blue trunks and kick pads away from being a full-blown battle arts match. It only felt like a natural business move for Ring of Honor. They start small with talent from 0-1, with the likes of Masato Tanaka and Shinjiro Otani in 2002, then a year later, it grows to All Japan talent like the Great Muta and Arashi in a tag team match against Christopher Daniels and Dan Maff. Then in 2004, with New Japan legend Jushin Thunder Liger. Liger, who was a part of the two-night Weekend of Thunder shows, first against Bryan Danielson on night 1, and on the second night, a tag match with Samoa Joe against Bryan Danielson and Low Ki. These would prove to be major talents for Ring of Honor to secure, but aside from entertaining and lighthearted showcases, they really aren't the most memorable bouts. This was for several reasons. For starters, while I'm in no way trying to insinuate that any of the men mentioned were phoning it in, there's no way in hell Great Muta or Liger were putting their working boots on in front of, at most, a few hundred people. Play the hits, do the poses, spew the mist, pop the crowd, get the payday. Also, the talent on these shows were already well known and had been well acclimated in the minds of American fans. Because Ring of Honor was born from the ashes of ECW based in Philadelphia, fans had seen the likes of Masato Tanaka plenty, being a mainstay of the ECW roster with iconic clashes against the likes of Mike Awesome. In Jushin Liger's case, he had been showcased numerous times on WCW programming, having memorable clashes with Brian Pillman for the light heavyweight title, even being the first match on the first ever WCW Monday Nitro. Hell, the Great Muta had been known going far back as the late 80s, being a contender for the NWA World Heavyweight Championship, going so far as holding it for a cup of coffee in 1993. If Ring of Honor really wanted to create some buzz for their promotion and book someone special, they needed someone whose career and matches were legend amongst the hardcore tape traders and was still putting out the best work of their career to that date. From a promotion who was putting out the best wrestling in the world. They needed someone who had never come to America and make it a special attraction. And luckily for Ring of Honor, that special promotion and special someone was more than willing to come over. And in August of 2005, through a new partnership with Pro Wrestling Noah, Ring of Honor announces that Kenta Kobashi, for the very first time, is coming to America.
I'm Kenta Kobashi of Pro Wrestling Noah.
In the early 2000s, Kenta Kobashi was a man plagued by injury and bad luck. A man who had given his body to a sport and a promotion that had defined the era he came from, but left him broken, and his quality of life, not just his career, in question. Yes, Kobashi was in his mid-30s, where most wrestlers would be entering their in-ring prime, and especially for a nascent company like Pro Wrestling Noah, would be in great need of. But the great pain from wrestling the grueling Kings Road style in 90s All Japan, particularly suffering injuries in his knees, had driven Kobashi to require extensive surgery. So painful were the injuries that it would cause stop-starts in his career, where he had to take months off just to heal. That really put into question whether or not he could actually perform at the level fans believed he could. And with doubts creeping in from fans, the thought of Kobashi going down the card, or at worst, retiring, wasn't out of the question, and if he did retire, that his career was good enough. As even with promotions like New Japan and All Japan on a downward trend, Noah was improving business year after year, with a healthy amount of young prospects and established stars who could carry the banner of Noah without him. But to Kobashi, he had to prove everyone wrong. The fans, the promotion, and even the man who always had his number and could never beat when it mattered most, Mitsuhara Misawa. And on May 3rd, 2003, a reign of fire would be ignited that would burn all those doubts to ash. From March 2003 to March 2005, 735 days to be exact, Kenta Kobashi was on the run of his life, beating Mitsuharu Misawa for the GHC heavyweight title, Noah's top prize, defending and defeating all who dare take it from him, including but not limited to Yuji Nagata, Yoshihiro Takayama, Masahiro Chono, Jun Akiyama, Akira Taue, and Minoru Suzuki. Certain matches in this reign being heralded by fans as the greatest matches not just in the company's short history, but in pro-res in general. Each match is a fight, pushing back fate and uncertainty as a declarative statement that even though his body may not be what it used to be, his fighting spirit still burns hotter than ever, working through and around his pain to finally become the heavyweight champion he was always meant to be, arguably putting on matches and having an in-ring ability that was even greater than his 90s All Japan days. A legend not just off his name, but in stature and ability. And by the time he drops the title, Noah firmly plants its flag as the greatest wrestling in the world. And he is coming to America to prove it. Except someone from across the Pacific has something to say about that. To him, Ring of Honor is the greatest wrestling in the world. A man, much like Kobashi, is the embodiment of the excellence his promotion offered to the world of pro wrestling, and would do everything in his power to stake that claim. And against Kobashi would be the perfect opponent to show the world how superior their wrestling was. And that man was Loki. Yes, Loki. Well, originally. See, when Gabe Sapolsky was originally booking the match, he knew damn well that Kobashi was not going to lose, and wanted someone to go against Kobashi that was legitimate, but not too high of a standing that it would make their champions look inferior. So that ruled out Bryan Danielson, who was the Ring of Honor World Champion, or Nigel McGuinness, who was the Ring of Honor Pure Champion. They have their own story, which is arguably more important. Watch Joseph's video. And Loki made sense as an opponent for Kobashi, not just because he was already established after winning the Ring of Honor World Champion in the promotion's early days, but also as appearing on Noah's shows in 2004 and 2005, going so far as contesting for the promotion's junior heavyweight title. Politically, it wouldn't have been the worst to have Loki do the job to Kobashi, although this is Loki we're talking about. Loki already had a booking in 1PW in the UK for the planned date of October 1st that interfered with the match, as well as the optics probably not being the most tantalizing, given that Key was giving up a few inches and almost 80 pounds to Kobashi. And if I'm being honest, I think it's because Kei had already been in matches in Noah and against Kobashi in tags that it wouldn't feel as special. At least, not in the way you're trying to sell Kobashi's first match in Ring of Honor. Luckily for Gabe, he has one other option. Someone just as physically imposing as Kobashi, had an aura that spoke louder than any descriptors could define, and through tough times, brought Ring of Honor to a level of prominence that made it the best wrestling in America. Kobashi will face Samoa Joe. There is no wrestler in the early to mid 2000s hungrier and more locked in than Samoa Joe. Let's ignore the 645-day reign he had with the Ring of Honor World title, or even that it was against the likes of Jay Briscoe, AJ Styles, Chris Hero, and Christopher Daniels, or within that time he had the iconic trilogy of matches against CM Punk that helped put Ring of Honor on the map as one of the premier indies in America, gaining adulation from the Wrestling Observer himself, Dave Meltzer, their second bout earning the coveted 5-star rating. But just in 2005 alone, he is having the kind of year most wrestlers would be lauded for in the same way a Ric Flair in 1989 was. By the time of the fated encounter with Kobashi, he would debut for TNA Impact, garnering a singles undefeated streak, winning the Super X Cup, and being a part of the legendary Unbreakable 3-Way alongside Christopher Daniels and AJ Styles in September, and by the end of the year would beat AJ Styles for the X Division title in one of TNA's greatest matches ever. He also spends some time in some promotion called IWA Mid-South, where he gets into a small scuffle with some guy named Necro Butcher. Probably not important. I've certainly never seen it. And in his home promotion of Ring of Honor, even without being involved in the world title picture, he's still putting on bangers and barn burners, defending the Ring of Honor Pure title. He's just kinda everywhere, and raising the stock of every promotion he goes to on a level that's just obscene. And in many respects, what made their eventual match together so special and well deserved of its dream match status was that Kobashi and Joe were two sides of the same coin. Both men had held their world titles for record periods at pivotal moments in the development of their respective promotions. Both men defended their titles against some of the best in the world in matches that raised its prestige. Both men, even without being in the world title picture, still were reliable as men who could push the limits. And both men wrestled with a kind of fire and passion to really prove something to the world. For Kobashi, he's taking Joe very seriously, flying the flag of Noah in America to prove that despite his injuries and wear and tear, that if the young and hungry want to step to him, they will realize why only few could ever truly walk the King's Road. For Samoa Joe, he's defending the honor of his home promotion. Through the good and the bad, Ring of Honor was the promotion that made Samoa Joe the standard on the American Indies, to prove he was not only on the level of someone like Kobashi, but someone that could surpass him. But at the end of the day, this match is about one thing and one thing only: Samoa Joe, Kenta Kobashi, in a match that could only exist in dreams. Who is the best wrestler in the world? October 1st, 2005. The Wyndham New Yorker Hotel. A location Ring of Honor used before in the same year to house Ring of Honor Manhattan Mayhem in May and Ring of Honor Escape from New York in July now bears witness to a dream match. 800 in attendance, buzz with intense fervor. While the show is mostly enjoyable if not forgettable, it's time for the main event, and the excitement cannot be contained. If there were any reservations and nerves leading into this match, it was from Kenta Kobashi. It's practically folklore at this point what Kobashi was trying to pitch going into this match with Joe, but for those uninitiated, Kobashi, doubting his popularity to American fans, felt that he would work best wrestling the match as a Mr. Fuji-esque heel that fit what he felt American fans were most acclimated to seeing Japanese talent. But in Samoa Joe's own words,
and I'm trying to explain to him in my somewhat conversational Japanese that, you know, everybody out there knows you, everybody knows who you are. Trust me, your tapes have been sold illegally to all these people well before this match was ever put in place, so, you know, they know everything. And
when Kobashi comes out before the New York faithful, all those trepidations and nerves melt into stunned silence. There's a level of pureness to Kobashi's entrance that could only exist from a man whose reputation truly preceded him. The 800 in the venue cheers so loud and so passionately that it makes them sound like they're 3 times their size, and all Kobashi can do is raise his arms in the air like it's his first ever match. Just happy to be there, and it makes me smile every time. He's just so dumbfounded by the praise and the joy the crowd elicits that he takes in every bit of the moment, high-fiving and shaking the hands of the crowd and surveying the audience to remind himself that yes, this isn't a dream, believing in Samoa Joe's words. They really love him, making Kobashi feel as if he were main eventing at the Budokan Hall. And while it's not the driving factor of what makes the match special, the sheer atmosphere and excitement of the venue and the fans give it this level of aura that, regardless of the in-ring content, makes this match feel so much bigger than anything Ring of Honor has ever done or will ever do. Thankfully, the actual match itself is an absolute classic. There's such a vicious intensity on top of dismissive arrogance that permeates throughout Joe's performance in the opening control, particularly the way Joe hits moves from the King's Road playbook. An elbow suicida from Masawa here, and collection of Kawada kicks there. Not only does this display Joe's fearlessness, never once being caught up in the aura of a legitimate legend, but also that this King's Road shit ain't nothing to him. As if to say, yeah, I've seen your matches, I can hit these moves too, what's so special about your style? Which is a very shallow but ultimately brilliant character flaw for Joe in the way he exposes said flaw, especially from one of the greatest switch flips in the history of pro wrestling. It's such a small moment, but this subtle angered expression from Kobashi and fear of God in Joe's eyes says so much without ever saying anything. It completely changes the vibe of the match from competitive exhibition to full-on war. Joe wanted King's Road, he's getting it. And it's a moment that really highlights the dichotomy between both Joe and Kobashi, as well as the ultimate downfall of the former. Kobashi is excellent at playing the long game with Joe, letting Joe empty the arsenal with big bombs and waiting for Joe to slow down for an opening, only for Kobashi to use his experience to dictate the pace of the match to soften up Joe for bigger offense. going from standard chops to a guillotine to an abdominal stretch, etc., all having a natural flow to it, breaking Joe down slowly as opposed to Joe's more frantic, high-impact style. Joe, for his part, is equally excellent in being perpetually on the back foot. There's a very doomed Death by 1,000 Cuts performance here that makes Joe's selling and desperation all the more engaging. Every time Kobashi leathers Joe with those scintillating chops, the way Joe stumbles to collect himself, and the pained, dare I say, fearful expression he wears completely erodes the confident demeanor Joe wore in the beginning of the match. It's almost sympathetic, and you can feel the walls closing in on everything Joe attempts when it comes to his offense. Most notable in where he tries to overwhelm Kobashi in the corner with Tenryu punch chop combos before hitting a nasty powerbomb into the turnbuckles, and going for the running boot immediately to set up Joe's finisher, the Muscle Buster. Compare this to Kobashi's more meticulous and deliberate pace, and you know that Joe is nothing but desperate. The waters got too deep for him, and Kobashi's fighting spirit completely flummoxed the Samoan submission machine, as the reality starts to sink in that Joe can't beat Kobashi. And yet, once Kobashi fires back to take control, Joe never completely drowns, and I think that's the magic in Joe's performance here. He never gives Kobashi anything less than his very best, and once it's time for Kobashi to beat the shit out of him, he stands and takes it, surviving some of his most lethal collection of head drops to just barely kick out of them. Being defiant to the bitter end, Joe unleashes one last flurry of strikes before Kobashi snuffs Joe out with a running lariat for the 3. The legends are who they are for a reason, and before the 800 strong in New York and Samoa Joe himself, they witness a performance that informs them that legends are in fact real. Kenta Kobashi, the grand sword, sharper than ever.
Guten Tag, it's Maffew, and it is so weird to be talking about the glory days of Ring of Honor 2005, because I was not there at the time. No. I was a Zandig kid. I was CZW black and yellow. But even the CZW dark, dirty, gothic, mostly long-haired white guys still stood in awe of the fact that Ring of Honor was able to put together Kobashi versus Joe. In Hannibal Season 3, Mads Mikkelsen tells the other lad, look, it's dangerous to get what you want. And I know that Hannibal is clearly a wrestling fan, because we did not get what we wanted so many times. We never got Kurt Angle and PWG in between WWE and TNA runs. We never got Prime Steiner versus Prime anybody, insert name here. There's so many times when wrestling has been two ships in the night, and it's so rare to get the dream match that you wanted for and asked for. Which is why we all have to pay our respects, our appreciation, our admiration, even for Ring of Honor, who, to put it in the school terms, CZW kids may have been the kids that were round the bike sheds trying crack, but Ring of Honor fans to us were the fans doing chess club, okay? So the fact that the crack-smoking, long-haired, whatever the hell, wrestling fans of CZW would still stop what they were doing in their tracks to appreciate Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi. Kenta Kobashi at this point was a legend in so many copies of The Observer, or if you're over my part of the world, Power Slam magazine. There's this great wrestler, this big chunky wrestler who, if reports are correct, never lifted weights because Giant Baba told him they were gay. So he did it all by himself. It's all natural body weight, which is insane because he looks half man, half boat. Taking on Samoa Joe, whose 2005 may be the best year of any wrestler and any company. Even more so than Alistair Overeem's 2010. Samoa Joe, not just content with being X Division champion and having that three-way at Unbreakable TNA, but also slumming it with IWA Mid-South and the match of the year, nay, match of the decade contender with him versus Necro Butcher. Decided to take on one another. It is rare that we get what we want. Sometimes we get what we want, and it stinks. JPEG of Vince McMahon versus Bret Hart at WrestleMania. End the picture. So it's so rare to get something like this. Samoa Joe in his prime. Kenta Kobashi, I don't pay that much attention to that period. As far as I'm concerned, it's his prime. He beat cancer, he can beat Samoa Joe. The commentator's doing a magnificent effort into selling the importance of this by stepping away, let the match talk for itself, which is good for Ring of Honor DVDs because they were set all the way to the highest volume setting. So when it speaks for itself, it speaks for you, it speaks for your speakers, it speaks for your earlobes, it speaks for old age, but you need it, as God intended, played at the loudest, so you can enjoy every chop, every blow, every strike, and every fan going, yes, yes, thank you God. I was not around for the discovery of planes, I will not be around for life on Mars, but I am lucky enough to say that I was here for Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi. I've never seen anyone underrate this. I've always seen people just watch it and go, God, it's like a wrestling fan's dream come to life. I think that is the best way of summing it. Well, if you had your prime favourite versus your other prime favourite, go at it. And it'd be amazing. Everything you wanted and more. Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi.
To this day, Samoa Joe vs. Kenta Kobashi remains an eternal classic, and one of my personal favorite matches of all time. And the reason why it's endured so much is because there's so much that can be appreciated about this match, no matter what you get out of wrestling. There's a level of spectacle and awe that emanates from the environment and the crowd, a kind of electricity that makes every loud chop or subtle facial feature feel like the biggest moment the crowd has ever witnessed. And it never once feels like it's just 800 people, with the kind of passion and admiration they pour on both men that rivals the atmosphere and energy of the biggest of venues. At its most boilerplate, Joe Kobashi is the big meaty men bumping meat match, incredibly hard hitting, with each shot louder and more violent than the last, with the head drops as nasty as anything you'll ever see in this kind of encounter. But if you go even deeper, the story being told in ring is just as entertaining. Kobashi feels and carries himself like a legend. Everything is measured, everything is built. He has such a firm understanding of what the crowd wants, and he paces himself perfectly, giving the crowd a taste of his ability with the signature chops before grinding Joe down to wrestle his match, letting Joe punch himself out, and by the time of the finishing stretch, gets to let loose with hitting all of his signature offense like the machine gun chops in the corner, with the crowd firmly in the palm of his hand, erupting for every move, which also leads into an underrated quality of Kobashi's performance that I don't see a lot of people mention. Kobashi is having fun. Look at the way he fires up and reacts to the crowd. pointing to the crowd as he tunes up one more chop to a down Joe, even this little head movement he has on the outside to test fan reactions, all informs him of just how much the crowd is on his side. Maximizing and milking every little moment of offense as he realizes how special this match is, not just to the audience, but to Kobashi himself. Joe, for his part, is the perfect opponent for the likes of Kobashi, not just as someone who's as physically imposing as Kobashi to represent Ring of Honor's best against the best of Noah, but he's the perfect foil for someone like Kobashi. Because Joe has watched plenty of Kings Road matches and even built the company around replicating aspects of those epic bouts alongside his fellow contemporaries, there's a feeling that he can easily stand against someone like Kobashi. His cockiness and dominance within Ring of Honor makes him feel like he's unstoppable. But when confronted with the genuine article, the pure source, he gets exposed. He can hit all the moves and throw all the chops, but his viciousness and fiery youth means nothing when Kobashi's experience and spirit forces Joe into his deep waters. And Joe is so great here at portraying how doomed he is in his battle against Kobashi. Every kickout, every struggle to keep himself from succumbing to Kobashi's godly chops, and every attempt to get back into the driver's seat offensively is desperate and indicative of whatever plan Joe had going into this match falling completely apart. When it becomes Kobashi's match, he can't outlast Kobashi, he can't outstrike Kobashi, and he damn sure can't beat Kobashi. But like I mentioned previously, what makes this performance from Joe so compelling and what holds this match together is that Joe never feels weak or lesser than. As easy as it could have been to have Joe escape to the outside, beg off, or do something dirty, he is more than capable of taking it just as well as he dishes it out. Comparatively, Joe takes the lion's share of the grossest bumps and hardest chops in this match, but he keeps coming, never once taking an easy way out or compromising his own aura. He's a badass through and through. And even when he's drugged closer and closer into the abyss by Kobashi, Joe stares back with middle fingers blazing. But in the end, Kobashi teaches Joe the ultimate lesson in his style. Kings Road isn't just about the big violence and the big moves or the head drops, it's about the fighting spirit. It's the struggle to keep going when all feels lost, when the pain is all but consuming. To truly be on the King's Road is a marathon, not a sprint, and one must walk it before they can run. And Kobashi, through numerous years, numerous titles, numerous injuries, and numerous matches, before New York, Ring of Honor, and the world, that on this road, no one quite runs quite like him.
I mean, they were separate entities on their own. If you were on the West Coast, you would hear so many stories and you would see so many clips or tapes about the East, whether if it's in Japan, Philadelphia, just all you heard about was just the exuberance, the energy, the aura that each of them provided. Then came the announcement that us in the modern times were literally going to watch the gods battle before us. And they did not disappoint. Because the second that the day arrived, I compare it to Christmas, or whatever you may celebrate. Because the second that match finished, that the smoke cleared, that the fall had been decided, we knew that it was something special, but at the end of it, we knew we were watching history. Joe versus Kobashi, the gods.
History is not significant just because it happens, but because of an understanding of time and place that leads to that moment's existence as significant. And in the history of professional wrestling, Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi isn't significant just because it's a great match, but because the sequence of events are so that something like this may possibly never happen again. It's the two greatest wrestlers in the world at the peak of their powers, carrying the banner and pride of their respective promotions, coming together to prove something before an audience that had never seen anything like it. For Kobashi, it's the importance of finally coming to America. Despite whatever apprehension he may have had about his star power, being in awe of just how special he is in front of a passionate New York crowd that worshipped his work. Whatever injuries or pain he may be harboring are pushed back, reciprocating that specialness to give the people the Kenta Kobashi they deserve. It's Samoa Joe, conqueror of Ring of Honor and the hottest wrestler on the American independents, loudly and ferociously declaring his specialness as he refuses to be intimidated or caught up in the legend of Kenta Kobashi. Even in defeat, displaying a toughness and fighting spirit that, while not on the level of Kobashi, puts Joe closer to his level than Joe could have imagined. A classic. Not just in its content, but in its context. And even if Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi is well regarded 20 years later, recounting and analyzing Joe Kobashi is still important. Why recounting and analyzing any match from pro wrestling's history is important. We are preserving their legacy. And when those who participate in these matches are no longer with us, it is our duty as the writers, the video essayists, the historians within this community to make sure their life's work mattered. That the art they gave with their bodies mattered. That the matches they wrestled were exemplary not just because of the time and place they existed in, but how it exists in perpetuity to help pave the way and inspire the future. As Samoa Joe versus Kenta Kobashi will always be held in reverence and immortalized in history. Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary buds, if you made it to the end of the video, I don't think the word thank you is a strong enough word to express my gratitude, especially given how difficult it's been coming back to YouTube. Without getting too detailed or coming off like I'm whiny, things in my life took extreme precedent over this channel, and even with the channel, copyright bots decided to do a drive-by shooting of my channel by striking me and removing 4 of my personal favorite videos I've ever done without any warning or protection from YouTube. I would be more upset, but luckily, those videos are not gone forever. Fellow Discord friend from Squill Snake Pit by the name of El Balisong has been preserving some of my videos, which means the 4 that got struck, including Ishikawa vs. Akeda, Dump Matsumoto vs. Chigusa Nagayo, Ishikawa vs. Sekimoto, and Team Sat vs. Team Onita, still exist within the ether that is the internet. The reason I haven't uploaded them back up is 1. I'm not going to attempt another copyright strike, and 2. I have plans on what I'm going to do with them. I just need the time to actually commit to that. For future updates, stay tuned to the channel. Anyway, long story short, video essays are little gifts of passion produced by the mentally ill, and I have so many people to thank for giving me the motivation to become a sick freak once again. Most notably, thank you to SamTheVAMod, who I was in regular contact with throughout the summer as we created this video. His patience and ever-creative mind for the art form has me anticipating every bit of footage he edits, and it's a privilege to not only have him in this community, helping out all of us freaks, but it's a privilege to call him my friend. Aside from my fiance, no one was more eager to have me come back to YouTube than him, and I cannot thank him enough for his work. Cheers, bruv. Shoutouts to KEIFER Green for letting us use his music on the video to help accentuate that Adult Swim vibe that I was going for. Please support his channel, as his music videos are so me-coded that no one else could possibly be a better musical addition to the video. Please check him out, socials in the description below. And of course, shoutouts to our wonderful interludes from the likes of Dino Winwood, whom, if you were around PWG in the early to mid 2000s, is an absolute legend in his own right, and was the perfect individual to help put one in the mind space of how monumental Joe vs. Kobashi was. And of course, the almighty Maffew of Botchamania. If I were to go back in time 10 years ago as a devout fan of Botchamania and tell myself that Maffew would not only be someone I was acquainted with, but was willing to guest star on one of my videos, I not only wouldn't believe them, but I would probably call the cops that this strange man had come out of nowhere to confront me. Truly a bucket list moment that still doesn't feel real. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And finally, to my fiance, Puzzled Orca, for the thumbnail of the video. No one was more supportive of helping me get my channel back on track and making videos quite like she was. So, to be honest, the real reason this video exists is because of her constant motivation, but also to make sure that I took time for myself. And of course, a big thank you to everyone who still stuck around and will continue to. I've got plenty of gas in the tank, don't you worry. But till then, much love, take care, and see you sometimes.